this point, we're just going to go ahead and get started so we can provide information and share information. Lucinda?
Okay, all right. I just want to say thanks again to everybody joining us today. As Valerie said, she and I both have a long background in affordable housing and working in the community, and we're pleased to be able to work with FNO on this. So I just want to thank you, and I also want to say thanks to the city and to LHC for coming in today, and let me turn it over to Damon from here.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm really sorry we're having issues with our technology. It's important that the public have an opportunity to see these videos, and that's what we've been trying to do. So we're recording this right now just so everyone understands, and we're going to make this available on our YouTube channel. So for those that know of others that are trying to reach this through our YouTube channel, it will be posted with a delay. So I do apologize. But thank you for joining us today. This is a really important opportunity for us in New Orleans, for us in Louisiana, to move our community forward. I've talked to many of you over time about the types of opportunities you'd like to create, the types of things you'd like to see from public agencies, the types of public investments that are important to doing the types of impactful development that we'd like to see, that we see in other places, but that are also unique to New Orleans. So we've been working as a public unit. We've been working on an agreement that predates my time at Finance Authority of New Orleans. I know predates others that have been working diligently on it. But this has definitely been a community effort to form a cooperative agreement between the City of New Orleans and the Louisiana Housing Corporation. And that marks an opportunity for us to work collectively as agencies to share resources, to make things easier for developers to do good in our communities, to make it easier for us to create opportunities for new jobs, for people to have decent, clean places to live, regardless of their income levels. And that's why we do this work. So this agreement is a milestone in that way, but it's just the beginning. And that's what this developer webinar is about. It's about announcing this agreement, but also this webinar series will continue indefinitely. And it's going to provide education. It's going to provide information to the community. I know we have many experienced developers with us today, but we also have a lot of emerging developers that are doing their first few projects, that have maybe done 1 or 2 units here or there, but they want to scale up. So a lot of this education and information is going to be dedicated to the beginning developer, but it's also going to be good information for experienced developers as well. So we hope you find this a useful resource. We'll talk more about the schedule later on in the agenda, but we have some great guests with us today. Mr. Cunningham from the LHC and Mrs. Willman from the city. These are 2 key leaders in our state in terms of developing affordable housing or creating the systems to make affordable housing work the way we want it to work, the way we need it to work. So we've asked them to come here today to talk about their position, what they plan to bring to the table, and how we all see this vision. This is a collective vision that we're trying to develop together. And I think, Mr. Cunningham will talk more about it, but, we need to have an effective network of development going across Louisiana, not just New Orleans. And so this is the starting point between the state and New Orleans in order to create better opportunity, to be more efficient, and reach our goals. So I'll turn it back over to Valerie, and so she can take us through the rest of the agenda. But thank you again for being here today, and thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you, Damon. As Damon said, we have some great panelists today who have a lot of information going to help everybody understand how this program works and how these different entities are working together. It's going to be an interview format. Lucinda and I are going to ask questions of all the panelists, sometimes for them each to answer, sometimes just something directed at one. Sometimes other panelists may have something they can add to what is being asked. So if you have questions during that you would like to ask, anytime during, you can use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And if you have comments or whatever, if you want to complain about us starting late, whatever you want to do that with the chat button. so we can keep the questions and answers separate from that. We want to try to answer at least some of the questions at the end of this. And then after today, the entire presentation is going to be available on YouTube. We're going to have to post it as opposed to it being going live. That was part of our technical difficulties. So if you want to review that, share it with others, that would be fine. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucinda, and we're going to start interviewing the panelists.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And you can see Damon and I are sitting here together. So let's just start by talking about the new direction of FNO in terms of the focus on sustainability. I know you guys have made a fundamental shift in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So sustainability is, as many of you've heard us talk about in our meetings, sustainability is just critical to New Orleans. It's what we need as a city and as a state. And sustainability can mean a number of things. You know, a lot of times that's synonymous with climate protection or climate resilience. But sustainability really supersedes that. It's just about having housing, having infrastructure, having government that can perpetually fund itself, that can perpetually sustain itself. And, you know, having homes, I heard this example many times after Katrina, where we had homes that have been standing for 200 years, and there were some homes built after Katrina, and they need repair already. And so I hear that a lot from developers, and I hear that as a lot as the reason why they want to develop a new project or a new program. So it's going to be important to us as an agency. We lost 95% of our portfolio value, and that's huge for a financial institution. We lost 95% of our balance sheet after Katrina, after the Great Recession. So as we rebuild it, we want to make sure we rebuild with sustainability in mind, so that when we do finance a mortgage or a multifamily project, that it can survive the 40 years that, you know, the city wants it committed to that project. It can survive the 40 years that LAC wants it committed. And more importantly, it can be a home that stands for a family that can pass it on generations, so that they'll have a home that outlasts. You know, most of our families stay in the home for a long time. You know, they don't build and move. So, you know, it's going to be critical to affordable home ownership as well as affordable rental units. It's just to having units where people can get comfortable and feel protected no matter what's going on around.
And pass it from one generation to
That's
the
right.
next sometimes too, building generational wealth. Now, could you give us just an overview of the CEA, of the agreement between the three partners, and why it's unique, why it's kind of the first, you know, I know it's the first of its type here, and I was wondering if you could just explain what's new and different.
Sure. Well, first off, there are multiple layers to the CEA, and this is really driven on a local level. This is driven by the city of New Orleans and its desire, the mayor's desire, to see more affordable housing development. So we've been working together as agencies, not just the Finance Authority and Marjorianna's office, but also Nora and Hano, and we've been talking about ways to create an effective housing system. So that's really the first step in this, is just better local coordination. And then on top of the local coordination, we've been working, the Finance Authority has been working directly with the city to create a better affordable housing financing toolbox, or at least a reliable set of tools or products that you can depend on every year when you want to do your projects. And we're trying to take the guesswork out of it. So, you know, when you go to the private market for financing, there's a lot of reliability and predictability in what you will get. So we try to take some of those same principles to the public finance side of things. But first step is that we've, you know, made an agreement with the city that allows us to, the city has empowered us to take advantage of our ability to finance tax exempt or to provide pilots or property tax exemptions. And then on the other side of the CEA with LHC, it's empowered us to offer multifamily bonds for local projects. And that's something that we just haven't been able to do in some time. So it's required a lot of coordination with the state. So the state has you know, put some trust in us that we're going to do the right thing on a local level, and they have some standards that they want the entire state to meet. So we're working directly with those standards, within those standards, and then making them unique to New Orleans. So this CEA is an example of the state accommodating a local need and us trying to be a bigger part of a bigger network of housing across the state of Louisiana. Because ultimately that means more resources for each locale if we're able to combine resources. So that's what's unique about this partnership. You know, I know it's different in every state, but this is the first example of this kind in this particular state, at least in recent years. Maybe Keith has a better perspective on that history, but this is important for the housing system in New Orleans overall and the state of Louisiana.
So this is the first time that we know of that LHC and FNO have partnered on something. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. What about from the developer standpoint? I know it's going to offer some streamlining in terms of process, right?
Yes. Yeah, there's some things that we have to do behind the scenes. There's some technology that we've had to invest in, just coordinating with LAC to make sure we're all on the same page, making sure the city is in the middle, always at the middle of the process. So Marjorianna's office is, they're constantly putting out funds for more development, and they have other special projects that they're managing. So, first step is we coordinate with the city to make sure we're on the same page about what the priorities are and where the needs are. Mm-hmm. And then we fill in the blanks there, but then coordinating with the state to actually make financings come to life. So,
but there's going to be, for developers, it's going to be an easier process,
well,
right?
That's the idea, that if we combine our processes on the back end, it'll make life easier.
It's streamlined on the front end.
That's right.
For the development community.
And that's also important because we want this platform to be open to the community. So in other words, if you have the capability of putting a deal together, we want this platform to be available to you as a member of the community, as a member of the public. And if you're going to reach the goals that are important to us. So as long as you can meet the prerequisites and you can bring all of the resources together, then we want you to have the ability to finance your project. And that's how we've set it up. And that's what the CEA is meant to do.
And large and small.
That's right.
Large and small developers, yeah. Are there any limits to how many resources are available to this?
There aren't any limits necessarily to how many resources are available. There are, of course, limits on, duplicating benefits and depending on what type of money you get in your capital stack. But for the most part, we're trying to load up projects with as much resources as they can handle or much that is reasonable, so where we're not giving away too many benefits. Okay. So we still have to manage the public trust, make sure that we're fair in how we distribute resources. So if we give, or invest in a project, we want to make sure it's enough for that project to be feasible, not necessarily to juice return, so to speak. So we try to be mindful about how much subsidy or how much investment we give to any one project. But we also want to be creative. Yeah, we also want to be creative. So sometimes developers, many on the call right now, have come to us with ideas that just aren't written out on the paper. So we have to be flexible too to make some deals work.
Right. Okay. And in terms of the projects that developers bring to the table, are there any size limits, parameters that we have to think about?
So the minimum unit size right now for our program for pilots is 10 units. So for pilot projects, we still have affordable housing, traditional affordable housing, and mandatory inclusionary zoning pilots. We're still building out the mandatory inclusionary zoning side of it, but right now the floor is 10 units. And of course, to do a bond deal, generally you need at least 30 units to make a bond deal work. So there's some natural limits for bond deals, but in terms of pilots or just exemptions, then we're starting at 10 units. But long term, we'd like to help out more smaller developers if we could. So 10 is a starting point, but we've heard from the community about possibly going below. So we're trying to work out.
Trying to see what you can
do. We're trying to figure out what we can do for smaller projects, because sometimes, developer just can only start with 5. And that's still a pretty reasonably sized deal. That can be $1 million project in many cases. So we're open, we're flexible, but there is a floor right now, and that's 10 units.
And that's okay. All right. And we'll talk more later, but right now I'm going to turn it over to Valerie to interview Keith.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for joining us. You know, everybody's probably not that familiar with LHC. So could you just give us a quick overview of what the mission of the organization is and then explain a little about your role in this partnership?
Absolutely. We're the Louisiana Housing Corporation. Our mission is to achieve safe, decent, energy efficient, affordable housing. And let me pull back. I'm Keith Cunningham. I'm the executive director of this organization. I've been here with the Louisiana Housing Corporation, formerly the Louisiana Housing Finance Agency, since 2006. So I've been here since disaster times, right? And this agency has represented a resource for the state of Louisiana. We occupy from homelessness to utility bills. And we have a very, very broad mission, but it's not ambiguous, right? Our role is to address housing insecurity wherever it exists and however it forms, whether it is an individual unable to pay his utility bill, or an individual that's homeless, or an individual who has a house that hasn't been weatherized or needs to be more energy efficient, all the way to single family home ownership, multifamily development. And we're enjoying a new role, a statewide rental assistance provider. So we step everywhere that there is a need, and our role is to address housing insecurity. But one of the bigger privileges we have is the opportunity to really present these opportunities to the communities that need them. While we focus, and you hear a lot of conversation about our much publicized 9% credit, we have a lot of resources that, when properly applied and leveraged with the right partners, create unique and real opportunities to address housing across the state. That's the purpose, to try to leverage those dollars. That's part of this conversation. So I won't advance past your questions. I just want to make sure, the holistic approach to housing is absolutely necessary. Damon and I have had, it's been years we've been having these conversations. I'm going to draw you back to 4 years ago when we were sitting in that breakfast, right before the breakfast, and we started talking strategies then. So you guys, we got some things planned. There's some things that we think housing can do for our communities, and these partnerships help us develop those opportunities fully and completely. So I'll stop because I can talk about housing all day long. You ask me some questions and I'll do my best to answer.
Okay, so again, what specifically is your role in this partnership? What piece of it are you going to? Well,
our role is we provide the credits. We provide those valuable tax credits. Our role was to bend our rules and our policies to move towards a new model of working with the local communities so that the local community can help us address their housing need. This, while it is unique, right? While it is necessary, it's really recognizing a challenge. And I'll tell you guys, and I won't go into conversations about volume cap because nobody wants to hear about that exciting conversation. But I'll tell you that there are resources that are driven to this state to address housing needs. And there are resources that this state has never fully tapped into in order to address that need. And if you go through communities across the state, if you just pay attention, you can understand, or you see direct examples of where we haven't really focused and leveraged and used all of those resources appropriately. So what we wanted to do was make sure all of the dollars that we have, 4% in the volume cap, were fully represented completely as we develop housing across the state. Damon and the Finance Authority of New Orleans represented a great opportunity to, number one, address that volume cap. Let's use those dollars. Let's get that bond money out. Let's get these credits rolling, creating the real opportunities in the communities that need them. And further, by partnering directly with the municipality, we're able to do quite a few things. First, we're able to grow and work with partners, right? Which is an underlying responsibility I think every agency has in the state. But this partnership is next level. This gives us an opportunity to achieve some real significant goals of using all of those resources to develop consistent housing policy statewide, as Damon mentioned. One of the things we see is we didn't have a statewide housing policy. And so there was no real attempt to try to address the need. And then what we recognize is in some communities, we're funding senior facilities and down the street, they're funding, I don't know, lights down the river. Some of those are real examples, so don't use those. And so what we wanted to do was try to develop a strategy that would get us all walking together in unison. The objective is that together we may be actually able to address the housing needs of the state. Working in the pattern that we've been working in for who knows how long, before Damon and I and Marjorianna have been a part of this solution, Lucinda, before we were even part of this conversation, there have been models that have been set up. And some of those models have inherent flaws in them. And some of the models haven't been reevaluated for their effectiveness. And so this is an opportunity for us to pull everything together and say, hey, how can we help New Orleans? How can we make Kool-Aid with you guys participating in the process so it's no longer a finger point to Baton Rouge or a finger point to New Orleans? It's we're working together. And you can't point fingers when you're holding them, right? So the goal was to develop those local relationships. Those goals were to develop really the true possibility of housing in the communities that need them the most. And when you have great partners, Marjorianna, the City of New Orleans, Damon with the Finance Authority of New Orleans, people who can hear and listen, as well as tell you honestly an approach, we feel we can accomplish even more objective than we have on the table now. So again, I can talk, you gotta stop me. Valerie, ask me another question.
Okay, so in New Orleans, this is a singular program, right? I mean, has this been done anywhere else in the state?
No, we haven't done it anywhere in the state. It's been about, 2 years in the making, Damon? Where we've been plotting and charging through and addressing some existing issues. No, we have not done this in the state. This is, like many things, if we can accomplish this with this group, in this area, we believe we can do this everywhere. But not every area has as robust a finance authority as you guys have. Not every area has as much expertise and much willingness or funds as the City of New Orleans has. So those are challenges we intend to address, but we like the workable model we have here, and we're going to try to place this footprint everywhere we can. In fact, we've already mentioned some of these conversations, Damon, to some of my members on the national level, because this is how small states like Louisiana, this is how states with poverty like Louisiana really start addressing our housing situation. So other entities that have these responsibilities are interested in how we operate this. And if we can demonstrate success here, I think we have a model that others can enjoy. Yeah,
well, that's what we're all hoping, obviously, because there are other communities that have serious affordable housing issues.
Absolutely.
We are concerned about New Orleans, which seems to have way more than its share of. So yeah, you could definitely build a model out of what.
Well, it's definitely, look, the housing situation is the same everywhere as far as need, right? We have so many people who are in rent stress. We have so many people who are living more than one family in a unit, and all of those things are not sustainable concepts when it relates to housing. Housing is a cornerstone for every community. That's a pun, but it's honest. If we can address the housing situation, we can fix so much more because housing is no longer the issue. So, our effort is to make sure also that the right resource, right? New Orleans is perfect and prime for these 4%. So let's gen this, let's make this work. And let's develop this housing in partnership, demonstrate the model for everyone else to listen to. So then when we come in, I'm pushing you, I'm not asking you, I'm pushing you to create the housing opportunities that other people will enjoy.
Okay, thank you for that. And we'll get back to you a little later with maybe a couple of other questions or points that you can bring. So now that we'll go back to Lucinda, and she's going to talk to Marjorianna about the city's role in all of this.
Thank you, and thanks, Marjorianna. Let's back up for a second and just talk about, I know the mayor has a real vision for addressing affordable housing and how partners should work together to do that. here in the city. I was wondering if you could just talk about the need, first of all, the need for affordable housing and what the mayor's big vision is for that.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. The need for affordable housing is very great. It was great when I came to the city 2 years ago, and it is going to be and continues to be exacerbated by the COVID, the pandemic. And we're preparing for that, and we're embracing and leaning into those issues. The mayor, when I first came in, just one of my very first tasks that was assigned to me by John, who's the mayor's chief of staff, was to get this CEA going and to get this work done with FNO. And so part of her goal was to have collaboration and communication between the different, locally, between the different partners. So FNO, New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, HANO, the Housing Authority of New Orleans, and then and OCD, the city housing agency, and then to branch out and to also work with the state. And we're at a point where it's not even an option. I mean, yes, it's great that we're doing this, but it is mandatory and necessary. I mean, there are very few deals, if any, that come to me that do not have a layering of funds anticipated. So that means funding from Louisiana Housing Corporation, private sector funding, and now we're really opening the door with FNO. And we're really pushing that relationship. So we're hoping also that they will also have that FNO connection. Some also have land that they've either acquired from the Nora Brenda Bros Redevelopment Authority. They will oftentimes have vouchers from HANO, or it's possible they can even have land from HANO. So I would say the mayor's vision is collaboration. And it's very important to her that we provide the necessary housing, that housing is available to everyone, and not just in certain areas, but it needs to be inclusive. It needs to be in areas that are amenity rich. It needs to be affordable, you know, and there, as you know, there are a lot of places in New Orleans that are quickly gentrifying. And a lot of the people who lived in those areas, their families lived in them for several generations, now can no longer even afford to live in those areas. So it's very important that we work out models that make those areas affordable. We do not want to have people isolated or where they can't live in places that are maybe close to their jobs, that provide the amenities that we all want to see. So it's very important. And then also we want people to be successful. So we have our home ownership piece of it. Home ownership is very important to the mayor as well. We know everyone's not interested in home ownership, but we do know that there's a segment of the population that is, and it's beneficial to have. So we have really ramped up our down payment assistance program and our home ownership opportunities, which even during the pandemic are continuing to do very well. So that is the direction that the city is going, and the other people on the Keith and Damon have said several things that I agree with, and it is same for the Office of Community Development. Housing is our #1 priority. Of course, we have other things that we do as well. We get funding from HUD, and then we have our local NIF funds, but housing takes our primary role, whether that's multifamily development, it could be scattered site development, or it can be 1 or 2 buildings. We have the home ownership side, but we also provide funding for special services and special populations. Like we support the Council on Aging, and we receive HOPWA funds that we use for those living with HIV/AIDS. So we also support some NORD facilities with our CDBG and reduce blight as well, working with code enforcement and permitting to reduce blight in areas. If you ever hear Ramsey Green, who's the deputy CAO, he always talk about how infrastructure and housing go hand in hand, and that's very true. So we try to work together and put our resources together so we get the most bang for the funding that we have available. So if we're developing a multifamily unit, just say in the East, we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure to complement that development. We don't want to just put funds out there without those funds shoring up, coming together and working, so we get the full benefit and impact of the funding that we have, because funding changes. We have seen, and I know I'm like Keith, I can go on and on too about housing, but since the pandemic, we've had to pivot. The state came to our aid to help us with that, and we were able to swap some of the funds that we had for development for our for COVID response. So think the funding can change. So we have to be pliable. We have to be able to change with it, open to ideas. As Damon said earlier, lots of times developers come to me with ideas, some of them I've never seen before, but like one of the things I tell them all the time, show me how this can work. Show me how it's within the program guidelines, and I'll go to bat for it. But it has to be within the program guidelines. It has to meet the primary goals of the city in terms of housing. And, other than that, I'll do what I can to make it work. So that's my spiel. But thank you, and I'm happy to be a part of this discussion.
Okay, thanks. Just another question as we get back to specifically the CEA that we're talking about. What's the city's role? Just to give folks a kind of a big picture of how all these pieces fit together.
Mm-hmm. So the city's role, again, most of the time when a developer comes to the city, they're going to need more than just the city funds. In fact, we never fund anything 100%. Okay. So for us, it's important that we are working and partnering with the other offices, because for two reasons. We never want to over subsidize any type of development, and we want to keep those lines of communications open, because it's not, I think when we have this structure, it protects us from developers shopping around, telling LHC something, telling me something different, and then going to Damon and getting something different. So we want to make sure that we have the proper measures in place to keep that from happening. But also we want to utilize the expertise that's at these different offices, because Damon's office is very suited and well suited for underwriting. It's the Finance Authority of New Orleans. And when I first came into the city, I felt like that was an area that was a gap. Even there's about 60 employees there. Some are very good in their areas, but I just felt there was a gap there. So one of the very first things I did was to reach out to Damon and see, well, how can we work together on this? Because I can look at the applications, but that's really not my role anymore to review every application that we receive. I need someone on your staff who have all this experience to help us with this. So, we reached out to Damon so that we have a very, very good connection with that. I'm on the panel that he has to help to fund and underwrite and approve some of the projects. So it's very important that we work together. And then also the state has been a great partner, and they're looking at things from a different perspective, but we do have to partner with them, because again, most of the projects that we receive will have some sort of funding from the state, whether it's 4% credits, 9% credits, it may be piggyback or some other forms of funding, but it's necessary and a requirement that we work together. I don't see any other way that we can meet our housing needs without having that collaboration.
Okay, I think we're gonna get back to that a little more and talk more, I think, about from the how this kind of works for the developers and the large and the small developers as well. But for now, I think I'm gonna turn it back over to Valerie, and we have some general questions we're going to ask, and just ask all the panelists, or any or all, to chime in with whatever, with your comments. So.
Right. So these are really just kind of open questions for our panelists. And the first one is, how does this program fit into the overall New Orleans building financing landscape? I mean, what makes it different than the way developers have been putting deals together in the past?
Well, I would say it streamlines the process. For one thing, even just the documents that they would submit, they're similar documents. So you're not starting from ground zero. Every office, you have a different document. We have come together, we've looked at these documents. We have thought out this process, and I say we, but working with FNO and Damon and his team, which is a great team, to make sure that the process is as best as it could be without being overly taxing on the developer. We want to make it work for everybody. And so I think that one of the things that's very helpful also is that it engages the developer very early on in the process. So the developer is not going way down the road with something that may not even be doable. They haven't talked to the city, they haven't talked to FNO, and it may not even be something that could pass planning and zoning. So I'm sitting at the table, I'm a part of it, I'm listening on the side of the city, so I can say, hey, let me set up something with planning. I'm not sure about that. Or let me get code enforcement or something like that involved. Damon has his staff involved as well. So they're looking at the numbers and they're saying, well, I don't know if this is financially feasible. So just the process itself is designed and meant to be helpful to the developer.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that, Val?
Oh, yes, sure.
Go ahead.
I'd like to say that in addition to what Marjorianna just spoke on, one of the long-term goals for us as an agency is to also help provide capital to the community. So one of the missing pieces that we see in terms of being able to actually take advantage of public financing tools, for example, bonds, tax-exempt bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you need credit to get into the bond market. You either need credit or a buyer in hand. So many developers come to the table with a bank that they can place these bonds directly to, but there are a lot of developers that don't. And they need us to help them market the bonds or to create a market for the bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's especially important. I saw a few questions come in about small developers. That's going to be really important once we have the infrastructure set up to truly support small developers and their rise from doing 0 units to 100 units.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of having public wealth is a necessity in these types of programs. Mm-hmm. So New Orleans, we know that we have a wealth problem, we have a poverty problem in New Orleans. So if the community is impoverished, usually the government doesn't have a whole lot of wealth either. Mm-hmm. Now we may have wealth more than the community collectively, and that's the point I'm trying to make. So the purpose of a public agency like Finance Authority of New Orleans, like the Louisiana Housing Corporation, is to use public wealth to stimulate private wealth. Mm-hmm. So we're not trying to take over any opportunities. We're not trying to compete with the developer community. We're trying to accelerate the developer community. So we're going to use our balance sheet to create products and programs that will allow developers to access the market at an efficient rate, to access the market at the best rates available, particularly for smaller developers. That is a goal of ours. We want to see that happen. So it's not something that's set up today. It's something that we're building this on the fly, as we've talked many times in our phone calls, our individual phone calls with all the developers on the line. We're building this on the go. We need your feedback. We need your honest, constructive feedback about how we should be going about creating this program. But ultimately, we want to use what public wealth we have with access to it to try to stimulate more private wealth, particularly for smaller developers and particularly in the harder hit or the neighborhoods that have not received much investment. In New Orleans terms, the 9th Ward, the 7th Ward, the 8th Ward, Holly Grove, like all of these areas that need big investment, we're trying to use our public dollars to steer the capital that way. And that's something different, and it takes a coordinated effort. And the first step is having CEAs like the one we're talking about today. Last thing I'll say, just so everyone understands, we've gone out as an agency outside of New Orleans to raise capital in order to do these types of things. And one of the first questions that we receive is, do you have support from the city and do you have support from the state? Mm-hmm. So we haven't been able to do anything of relative value, of tangible value, that will get everyone excited just yet, because we haven't had this kind of arrangement in place. So now that we do have this kind of arrangement, the expectations are there for us to deliver on those types of projects. So that is the next step. We have to deliver on what this CEA allows us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just say, what Marjorianna said, what Damon said is absolutely correct. I will add that, from a streamlining perspective, we get concepts all the time. And as the agency has, again, a statewide presence, it's very difficult for us to try to make a decision about a development without the community buy-in. And it generally lends itself to just more problems. And so what we like, the biggest concept or the biggest component of this that we believe will be a benefit to everyone is not only the streamlining aspect of it, but the roles and the responsibilities that are already present, already being filled by individuals will simply add to the component of development. And we'll have an order and a structure that anyone who wants to get involved will know where to go and how to proceed. Of course, the issue of over subsidy, our deals won't allow for it. And so we have to factor it every step of the way. And so by doing this, we eliminate that concern. It doesn't become an issue with us when they receive our funding and then do something outside. So, and we have to catch it and control it and put it back into the framework of funding. But as Damon introduced earlier, that capital stack, we need to see it. And so if we can address it in the beginning, we see it all the way through the process. And we're able to be very demonstrative with the public. We're able to be proper stewards of these funds. We're able to be accountable, identify achievable objectives and goals. Excuse me, guys, I talk with my hands. We're able to achieve these goals and objectives, and then we're able to speak to the community about what we can do. And I'm not a fan of asking for anything. I'm a fan of showing people what we can do. And if we can show them what we can do, my ask becomes easy. If I can show you what we can develop by developing these partnerships, don't ask me questions, just give me money. So that's my statement. I think Damon and I and Marjorianna, we probably had these conversations more times than a few. I'm happy to be in this stage. I'm happy to be involved in this process. I'm happy to share the responsibilities, and I'm happy to share the results of pulling these responsibilities together with all of these team members. So kudos to Damon, kudos to Marjorianna. I know our time is drawing short, so I don't want to labor this conversation. I think this is awesome. I think this is going to be incredible, and I just look forward to implementing.
So, yeah, thank you for all of that. And so you keep talking about the streamlining. So basically, I mean, that makes it sound like it's like a one-stop shop kind of situation, like, where you can go somewhere and you can get bond money, you can stack that with,
Right.
tax credits.
That's the approach. That's the approach, is to come with a one-stop concept that will give you all the information you need, identify all the regulatory requirements, all of the hurdles, all of the I don't want to call them barriers, but all of the requirements as it relates to Damon's funding, the city's dollar, and the state's tax credit dollar. We're able to get all of that in one component, one thought process, and then everyone knows what to anticipate and expect. If you come with a project halfway design and I say, oh, we're only doing money for elderly housing, then all of that work, it's a waste. But if we understand now how we intend to address those issues from the beginning, I mean, we said it, I don't want to repeat it. That's the purpose of Streamline. That's the point of having that one concept stop. Not necessarily everything happens in Damon's shop, but it's just that one concept is brought, and then all of the pieces can reach it from Damon's side. And that's the real component of how that CEA, Cooperative Endeavor Agreement, will help us, because it'll put us all in a position to address the components of our funding in one area at one time, as close as we can get. And we're still working, so I'm not going to count success. I'm just going to count effort.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. This is kind of the formal end. We do have some questions and things, and I want to put on the screen the schedule of the seminars that are coming up. So we, as Damon said, it's really indefinite, but we know through this year we're planning several more seminars, basically one a month. September and October actually have two, just because of other things that are going on, or we hope that will be going on in those months. So we can make this information available to everyone, and hope that you will tune in. We're planning to like really kind of drill down in these as we move on, you know, where this is just more of an overview. So you'll be, I mean, you know, if you're really interested in, and you want to hear more, there's a lot more to hear. So with that, let's look at a couple of the questions that came in. One of them, well, several of them were about small developers. And, you know, like, should we forget about it if we don't have a project of 10 units? Damon, can you answer that?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I know there are going to be different answers from each agency, but from our perspective, today, the limit for pilots is 10, but we are aware that there are projects that, for example, are in the 5-unit range, and we're developing programming for that right now. So yes, please continue to come, please continue to show up. We have to bring these programs from the ground. And in many cases, we're going to need your feedback, and we're going to use these workshops as an opportunity to get your feedback about what is needed. What do you need to get your first 5-unit project off of the ground so you can start doing larger 10, 30-unit projects? Or maybe you just want to do 5 units a year, and that's fine too. So, you know, our objective is to provide the resources. This is our first step, providing you with some information, some education about how these deals work. It's very, you know, the tax credits and bonds and pilots, it's a language all its own. So we want to make sure there's some understanding about how these products work, but then also there's an understanding for you to put it all together and work with each agency in a variety of ways. So, you know, the first workshop coming up is
The next
the next one is going to be about sustainable building practices. We're going to have another one about low-income housing tax credits, how to use pilots. You know, these are all elements that will need to be understood to complete a successful project. And the information is going to be dedicated to making sure smaller developers understand it. Experienced developers will be on the line. They have many new employees that will come through. Some of those experienced developers will actually instruct some of these workshops. We're going to bring in different guests every month. So don't get discouraged, small developers, just because we don't have that program today. Contact us. There are ways. We're trying to be creative about helping you get projects off the ground. But our top priority is to create an actual program that has parameters, has funding, and has some dependability, so that, as Marjorianna said, if you can meet the criteria, if you can bring all the resources to the table, and we'll help you fill in the blanks with some of those resources, but that's the place we want to get to for small developers. So it's not just us having to create something new every time we get a proposal from a smaller developer.
And just the next workshop is going to kind of go into some of the nitty gritty about how this works, right?
That's right. That's
so
correct.
People are asking a lot of questions about specifics, if I can tell. So just on the next one at the end of August is going to address a lot of that.
Can I just add something about that question? The city is working on a way to help small developers, and when I say new developers or developers that do not have existing development under their belt, I'll put it that way. And I just want to say that the city recognizes a need in building capacity and developing developers. I believe that some of the issues that we have, especially like with the blight reduction, infill development, I believe it's going to be our local developers that come to the aid of the city. It will not be the very large developers who have, because scattered sites, it is difficult. It comes with its difficulty. So there is a place, in my opinion, and I believe that Mayor Control shares that opinion, for building capacity and funding small developers to go into those neighborhoods and streets and build and redevelop that one unit or that one double, or then 2 or 3 doubles, and then the next block over another double. So it's important. We're working on it, and you'll see something very soon related to that. But definitely it's something that we're working on. But I will want to say, for transparency, is that, again, our office has got funding, so I will need to see some other type of funding sources that comes with those type of proposals. So just go ahead and start looking around for other sources of funding. FNO's working on that as well, but it is definitely something that we're working on, and we have some plans. So keep your eyes open for that.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have our contact information up here of all of our speakers today. And if you have some general questions, and some of the general questions that came through on the chat or the Q&A, we'll be able to answer those for you at that email address, which is the rsvp.fano@gmail.com. And we'll be able to, I mean, some of them were kind of not, I mean, they were questions, but they were more comments, and we've answered some of them here. But, you know, if you have specific questions, I've seen a few in there, we'll be able to get those answers to you in a day or so. So, yeah, so just go to that email and send us your questions. I mean, I'll be taking the questions from the list of questions that we have as well. But if you want to resend it, you can, and the email will come back to you from that rsvp.fano address. So anybody have any last words that they'd like to leave us with? I mean, you know, words of wisdom as we go into our weekend?
Well, I would just like to say that the city is open for business, and we are developing affordable housing all over the city. We just had a groundbreaking, and we have one coming up in the next couple. They're just coming up back to back, and we're looking for alternate ways to fund these developments. The city's working on selling general obligations bonds, and so some of the projects that were on our wait list are going to be funded. So what I would say is to put your deals together, set them up, get it right, and come and engage FNO, engage the Office of Community Development, engage LHC, and see where we can go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Keith, any final thoughts?
I mean, you guys have heard me talk long enough. I'll tell you that the promise of cooperation means more than anything. We've seen the state with a lot of resources and no cooperation, and we see what happens when we work together. You see a lot of what happened after Katrina was a result of people cooperating. And so we never want to be in a position of sitting in Baton Rouge and telling anybody what to do. We want to truly be the resources this agency was intended to be in every community across the state. These partnerships are vital to that, and having the right people in the right place at the right time, for some reason, seem to be required. So we've got the right people, we've got the right place, and we've got the right time. Now it's time to go. And so I challenge the community that if this isn't how you like it, tell us how you want it, and we can see how we can match whatever your effort is. We listen to everything. If you come in with, I've got deals on my deck, Damon, I'll send them to you. that are some of this. I won't call it. What I'll tell you is we need housing. You see where we are now. You see what's happening in our communities. I mean, you just heard the president tweet something as if he's going to violate the Constitution of America and allow people to be, their fair housing rights to be violated. That's not an executive order, my man. At the end of the day, we've got a mission to serve individuals in this state individuals who have been left behind, individuals who have been maligned, individuals who have not been given opportunity. And so if we can't accomplish that goal, there is no point. And that is how we serve people, completely, holistically, all the way through. So I just thank you guys for being amenable to these kind of conversations, putting this together in this time frame, giving us an opportunity to talk to the public, giving us an opportunity to continue to get it right, because that's what we're focused on, getting it right as to addressing people's needs. I just want to thank you guys. So thank you, Damon. Thank you, Marjorianna.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I'll just say lastly, speaking of getting it right, I promise to the community we're going to get it right next time. Excuse me, I'm sorry that we're late today, but we'll get it right. We're going to do better next time. And we like to have the public involved in these conversations. So that's why we put it on YouTube Live. But we're still figuring out how to do webinars over here on the government side.
Look, that's okay, Damon, but I just want you guys are violating the 6-foot rule. I'm just telling you. I'm writing this down.
We had to get started.
If anybody is coughing tomorrow, hey, I know what's happening.
We got all protections.
Guilty.
But no, thank you everyone out there. We have a lot of work to do. This is only the beginning.
Yeah.
We're going through transformation on the governmental side as well. Cities and governmental agencies just have to behave differently now. We have to be more dynamic, and that's what's going on here. That's what the CEA is about. So LAC is shifting its role and trying to create a new, a new value for the state. We're doing the same thing. We're following the city's lead. We work with Marjorianna very closely. So reach out to us, send us your deals. We want you to be creative. We set up the open platform so that everyone can share their ideas. And we're going to help you fill in the blanks with the resources that are needed to reach our goals. So that's why we're here, and we're looking forward to working with you. So thank you for your time today, and we hope that you join next month, and the month after that, we're doing this for you. So let us know how we can make it better. And thank you to Lucinda and Valerie for hosting today. They're going to be our moderators and hosts moving forward. They're here to moderate, to take your questions, to help us make things better. So if you have feedback, that's why we've asked them to do this for us. To gather all your feedback. We had over 100 developers on the line today, so that's a lot of information to take in. So that's the role they're helping us with in this case. So please utilize all the resources we make available and let us know if we can help. Thank you.
Thank you.